I want to say what a great honor it is to be back with you, Downtown Rotary Club of Louisville. A lot of times I'm asked to give speeches and never invited back, but you all occasionally invite me back, so I take that as a good sign. But you're an outstanding organization, an organization I have great respect for. The values that you espouse are values that we should all live by. You are community leaders, opinion leaders. I think I've mentioned to you in my other presentations, my dad was a lifelong member of the Butyl Fern Creek Club. I'm an honorary member, and I appreciate that very much, being an honorary member of this club. And I think I've told you the story before, but after the breakup of the Soviet Union in the early 1990s, I had a contract with the government, State Department, to do work in Kazakhstan and helping that former Soviet republic make a transition from a command economy to a market economy. And one of the people that I was working on my many trips to Almaty, which was then the capital, was a Rotarian. And that individual started the first Rotary Club in the Republic of Kazakhstan. And I went to the meetings and so really feel a part of the Rotarians. I know I just have a few minutes, but first I want to give a report to you, our shareholders of the University of Louisville. We're a public institution, proud that we're a public institution, and so we want to report to you, the stockholders, shareholders of the university. I want to update you on some of the issues at the university, some of the noise or challenges or many of the things that you read about or hear about, and then finally just give you some personal reflections. So first, report to you, the taxpayers of the Commonwealth of Kentucky. The University of Louisville, as you know, has a long history going back to 1798. 8 community leaders came together and said if the University of Louisville was to be a place of some consequence, if the community of Louisville was to be a place of some consequence, it needed an institution of higher education. And those 8 individuals became the benefactors that founded the University of Louisville. For most of our history, we were a private institution. We were private until 1970, came in the state system in 1970. And when we came into the state system, we were another mouth to feed, and an expensive mouth, because we had a medical school, a dental school, law school, engineering school, all of which are located at the University of Kentucky. So the seminal date in our history, the seminal event, in my view, in our history, was 1997, and I was there on leave from Western Kentucky University and their faculty. Skipper was there, but under the leadership of Governor Paul Patton, Governor Patton pushed forward the Post-Secondary Education Reform Act of 1997. And it was a 200-page bill, but it was a very simple bill about a better Kentucky. And the route that Governor Patton believed was the road that would take us to a better Kentucky was investing in higher education. We'd just done care reform a few years earlier, so it was time to reform higher education. In the Post-Secondary Education Reform Act, for the first time, the people of Kentucky said to the University of Louisville, here's what we expect you to be accountable to. Here's the mandate that we're giving you, and that's to be a great nationally recognized metropolitan research university. That is what we live to achieve every day. Now, I'm an economist. I don't get to teach very much, but where 2 or more are gathered, I always give a very brief economics lecture, so bear with me for about 2 minutes here. A little bit of economics and a little bit of economics on the Commonwealth of Kentucky. If you can see this picture very well, along the horizontal axis is time, and it's different dates right up to the most recent month, but it goes back to the year 2000. The Post-Secondary Education Reform Act was passed in 97, so we were given a mandate. And right after we were given that mandate was a golden era for higher education. There was Bucks for Brains funding and research funding, and the KEYS program, the scholarship program, was created. It was a great time for higher ed. But shortly after that, the Kentucky economy went into a recession. What I look at as an economist to sort of value or to assess what's happening in the state is I look at how many people are working, how many people are employed. And so what I plot here is employment on a monthly basis over time. And when people lose their jobs like they were doing in 2001, 2002, the first sort of dip that you see there, 2003 and 2004, when people lose their jobs, they're not paying state income tax, and they don't have discretionary income to spend on goods and services, and so the sales tax goes down and we take budget cuts. 75% of the state's general fund comes from the individual income tax and the sales tax. So when employment's not growing, there's state budget issues. And so the University of Kentucky and the University of Louisville during that period of time went through 5 budget cuts. So we'd been given a mandate, and then immediately, 3 years later, we went through 5 budget cuts. We understand the business cycle, and so employment began to grow in Kentucky, and then the great national recession of 2007, 2008, 2009, the worst economic downturn since the Great Depression of the 1930s. And you can see what happened to employment. And even though employment has finally come back and we have more people working in Kentucky now than we've ever had working, we still have budget problems in Kentucky because over the last decade we have allowed ourselves to find ourselves with a structurally imbalanced budget. Our recurring expenditures at the state level are greater than our recurring revenues. So people are back working, they're back paying income taxes and sales taxes, but our pension liability is far outstripping the growth in our revenues. The population, the Medicaid population is growing faster and has resulting cost and so forth. So since 2008, higher education has taken another series of budget cuts. And at the University of Louisville, we've been through 9 budget cuts in that period of time, a total of 14 budget cuts over the last 15 years. And to make things a little bit worse, this is manufacturing employment. We've been historically a manufacturing state. And manufacturing has been our best paying jobs. And you can see what's happened to manufacturing employment. That little bitty national recession that was just a blip on the national radar screen in 2001 and 2002 had a profound impact in Kentucky because we began to lose our best paying jobs, our manufacturing jobs, our durable manufacturing jobs. Jobs that paid good. And I grew up in Fern Creek, Kentucky, and remember when Appliance Park opened in Buchel. And remember its heyday when 26,000 people employed there, and you could graduate from Fern Creek, get a job at GE, and have a wonderful quality of life. Today, GE employs 6,000 people. We have great partnerships with GE, and we can get a lot of those jobs back through advanced manufacturing. But you can see what's happened to manufacturing employment. So a lot of the jobs that we have added back over the last several years are lower paying jobs than the jobs we've lost. So even though our employment numbers look good, again, some of the jobs, the great jobs, logistics, distribution, and other areas, don't pay what the jobs we lost were. So what did we do at the University of Louisville? We're facing the issue of having a state mandate to be a great university and to do things in our region, in our community, and for our state. Because Governor Patton's vision was that for Kentucky to succeed as a state, Louisville had to succeed. And Louisville, as the only major urban area, had to drive the train. And Governor Patton knew that great cities have great universities. And the research of Russ DeVoe at the Millikan Institute is pretty clear that the great growing communities have great research universities. And Governor Patton knew that this community needed a great research university. So what did we do? We developed 7 strategies for moving forward in a difficult fiscal environment, a period of budget cuts. 1, we do what everybody does, manage cost. And we've cut $130 million out of our budget on the cost side. The things that we did were the easy things that really didn't affect people too much, didn't effectuate too much change. We implemented energy management programs, energy audits, and that really didn't affect people's lives too much. We entered into a prescription drug program, prescription buying program in consortium with the University of Kentucky and Eastern to drive down our prescription drug costs for our health insurance. And again, as long as people got their prescription drugs, that didn't bother people. We wash windows every other year instead of every year, and that didn't bother people. Now we're having to climb higher in the tree. We've picked the low-hanging fruit, and now on a cost management perspective, we're having to do more difficult things that cause real change and challenge people day to day. Our second strategy was to take underperforming assets and make them fully performing. And I hope you've had the chance to drive Shelbyville Road and Hirschburn and see the development that's going on out there. We've developed a joint partnership, joint venture agreement with NTS. We're 51% partner, they're 49%. We've developed 3 buildings. When the first 2 buildings are completely leased, completely full, When the third building is completed and leased, that'll generate $1.2 million in cash flow back to the university to help us with our teaching and research mission. We had 240 acres of property there, very valuable property that was going underutilized, so we're trying to utilize that to move us forward. We wanted to get more value out of our research and our intellectual property. This is Suzanne Ilstead, one of the first Bucks for Brains professors in our state. And Suzanne developed an amazing discovery, a platform that deals with solid organ transplants. So if Joey needed a kidney and I was going to be his donor, what Suzanne would do would take stem cells out of me, put them in Joey before the transplant. And so then when my organ went from me to Joey, his body was thinking it was getting his own kidney, and he wouldn't have to be on these immunosuppressant drugs the rest of his life. We were able to sell that technology to Novartis and realize significant resources from that. Our fourth strategy is to have the private sector do what we're not good at. We're educators, we're teachers, that's what we should do. And so the private sector is our partner in housing and dining, bookstores, all kinds of development ventures. And that's been using someone else's balance sheet, not our own balance sheet, has been an integral part of what we've been trying to do. Fifth, we undertook a capital campaign, and I don't see Keith Inman here, but Keith had what I called a hotshot consultant that told us that a university like the University of Louisville could raise about $600 million over a 5-6 year campaign. We had a Board of Trustees member at that time who said, let's shoot for more. Let's not be afraid to fail. And in fact, they actually said they'd rather strike out in the major leagues than hit a home run in the minor leagues. So we set the goal at 750. And we got to 750 and we said we're going to keep going. Let's set the goal for $1 billion. And we went to $1.1 billion. And as I'll mention in a minute, we're going to announce a major gift in a couple of weeks, $22 million gift. We're ready to go on with another campaign even greater than $1 billion. Sixth, we wanted to be creative and do things that other people haven't done. We've created 3 tax increment financing districts. We have a research park downtown focused on biotechnology, healthcare, life sciences. We have a research park we're developing on the Belknap campus focused on additive manufacturing and helping our manufacturers get jobs back. Focused on logistics and distribution, focused on renewable energy and analytics. And then we have our research park on the Shelby campus. As we add jobs on those research parks, we get a portion of the state taxes and local taxes that are generated to come back to the University of Louisville. And then finally, our 7th strategy was to generate more clinical income to, again, support our teaching and research mission. Right before the holidays, we announced an agreement to a long-standing dispute with Norton's Hospital over the management of the Kosar Children's Hospital. This community is so fortunate to have an outstanding children's hospital, one of the top children's hospitals. And it wouldn't be one of the top children's hospitals if it weren't for Jerry Ward, Randy Coe, and the Kosar Charities and what they have done for this community. But there were some disputes. Our faculty of the primary provide the primary physician care in the hospital, but the hospital was managed by Norton's. And so there were tensions, but we worked through that. And we got all that worked out before the holidays, signed an 8-year agreement that will provide the University of Louisville $300 million over those 8 years. And the partnership is back on track and working well. We've done a number of other things in the clinical area. We have 700 practicing physicians at the University of Louisville. They see patients. And if a patient comes in and cannot pay, doesn't have insurance, cannot pay for health care, they'll get the very best in health care at the University of Louisville. But at the same time, we knew we could generate more clinical income to support our teaching and research mission, and that's been one of our strategies. How have we done with these strategies? You can see our budget in 2002. 2002, yeah, that's the year I started, but that's the year of our first budget cut. So if you look at our budget, total budget in 2002, 2003, state appropriation was our #1 source of revenue to the university, $178 million. In the current budget, it's $141 million. Our 2 largest sources of revenue now, besides tuition, certainly tuition has gone up, that's an issue we can talk more about, But the first line there, the $462 million, is clinical income and research income. The next line is philanthropic support. Our philanthropic support on an annual basis today is $154 million. Our state appropriations $141. So that's what our budget looks like. How have we done? We've had 14 budget cuts. How have we done since the passage of the Post-Secondary Education Reform Act, or how have we done since our first budget cut? To me, this is the most important statistic that we'll go through today, and that's how many baccalaureate degrees we're awarding. And you can see the trend line. We're up 63%. We're graduating over 1,000 more students a year today than we were in 1998. And we do that in great partnership. And I'll talk about Kevin Cosby and our great partnership with Simmons, and Kathy Dykstra and our great partnership with Family Scholar House, and retired, and I'm envious, Tony Newberry. We could not have done anything we've done at the University of Louisville if it wasn't for Tony Newberry and the outstanding work of the Jefferson Community and Technical College, and thank you, Tony. Kentucky has an undereducated population. Our per capita income is 80% of the national average. We deserve better. And the reason that we have per capita income of 80% of the national average is because we have too few people with college degrees. This is an important number and an important statistic, and that's what drives us every day. 6-year graduation rate up 38%. Doctoral degrees awarded up 129%. Let me go back. Research expenditures from $39 million to $179 million, $359. We're to be a major research university. We are Carnegie classification highest level of research. Startups. Maggie got up and talked about her company. We're so proud of her and her colleagues and what they've done with InScope. Startups have gone from one startup company coming out of our research labs in 1998 to 81 startups today. Annual philanthropic. The $86 million in 1998 was right at the end of what was called the bicentennial campaign, a campaign that raised a little over $300 million. The rule of thumb for the University of Louisville is you could raise about $1 million a week, $50 million. So when I started, we were raising about $53 million. Last year, we raised $237 million. And I'll talk in a minute about where we are at mid-year. The past 10 years, the University of Louisville has had 83 of our students win the prestigious Fulbright scholarships in research and teaching, more than every other school in the Commonwealth of Kentucky combined. You're supposed to cheer. Mid-year, applications for the next year. A lot of noise out there. A lot of editors and all talking about reputational risk and so forth. Applications up 13%. Raised $102 million in the first 6 months of this year. And again, a major gift announcement to support our regenerative medicine program in the next several weeks. We have $1.4 million of construction going on our 3 research parks. Very little of that, almost none of that is state dollars. That's private sector dollars, philanthropic dollars. And we've already spent $1.6 million since 2002. Think about that. From 2002 to 2020, that's $3 billion that has been invested in this community. During the recession, there was one crane in downtown Louisville, and that was our nucleus project, our life science campus. So my recommendation to the stockholders of the University of Louisville is a very strong recommendation of buy and hold. Don't give up on the University of Louisville. We're moving forward and moving forward aggressively. There's been a lot written. Let's talk about what's been written, but we're moving forward and we're more focused than we have ever been. We're human beings. I'm human. Jane reminds me of that every day, sometimes multiple times in the same day or same hour. We make mistakes. We have 6,000 employees at the University of Louisville. We operate 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. We're in a lot of lines of business. We're in the housing business, police business, health services business, food business, research business, entertainment business, sports business. And oh yeah, we're in the education business too. So yeah, people make mistakes. And Forrest Gump said sometimes things happen, and we wish they didn't happen, but they happen in all organizations. And our approach at the University of Louisville is we're going to determine wrongdoing. We're going to discover and deal with it openly and honestly. You know about everything that happens at the University of Louisville because that's our attitude. We are transparent. Don't believe anything you read or hear to the contrary. If there's criminal activity, we'll aggressively prosecute criminal activity. Some people are still writing about people that went to jail and have been out for 2 or 3 years. We'll learn from our mistakes. I'm a firm believer that we all fall, we all falter, but we can learn from those mistakes and be better and stronger. And we're not facing any issues that other organizations in this community face. And I'm just glad we don't face the problems at some institutions in higher education. There's nothing that's more counter to the academy than academic fraud and not investigating sexual assaults and sexual abuse and so forth. Some of the noise is for show. Our local newspaper chose after last Thursday's meeting to have a headline front page story that said 2 trustees didn't support me. I'm surprised it wasn't more than that. And that's not news. I got to tell you, that's not news. The Washington Post covered the same meeting and talked about former governor, the current governor, challenging the legitimacy of the University of Louisville's board. Our board is illegally composed. There's a law that says how many African Americans we should have on our board, how many Democrats we should have, and how many Republicans we should have. And there'll be a court hearing on that next week. Jimmy Higdon, who wrote this article, also said that according to our internal controller's office, the university's net unrecovered loss in these 6 high-profile thefts that have been reported was not $8 million, but was $29,000. That's wrong. Shouldn't have happened, but that's the facts. Let me talk for a second and wrap up, and then we'll have questions. Let me reflect on me. You've heard a lot about Fern Creek. I am from Fern Creek. That's all I am, Jim Ramsey from Fern Creek, Kentucky. And that's all I'll ever be. I'm a teacher, an educator, and I'm an economist. And all I really ever wanted to do was to teach and be an economist. But Paul wrote in his letter to his mentee, his student, Timothy, in the first letter, that Paul said, I was strengthened and called to service. And I've been strengthened and called to service to help educate people so that Kentucky can be a better state. And so that has been, and for whatever time, I'm 67 years old, and I don't know how much longer I want to have all this fun. I want to share it with some people. Some other people ought to be able to have as much fun as I have, but I'm going to remain focused on one thing and one thing only, and that's students, and that's young people. And seeing that we recruit students, and seeing that our students graduate ready for the workforce, professional programs, graduate programs, and prestigious postgraduate scholarships like the Fulbright. I'm an economist, and the one thing economists understand is economics. And I didn't know if that would get a laugh or not. Gary Becker won the Nobel Prize in economics, University of Chicago professor. And he is the one that talked about education is an investment good. It's not a consumption good. It's an investment in brain power. It's an investment in human capital. We can invest in roads and bridges and buildings, but our primary top rate of return comes from investing in brain power and people and knowledge. We live in a knowledge-based economy. The most important input into the production process today is brain power. The great companies of today were somebody's ideas that they had in their garage. And they believed in themselves, like Maggie and her team, and they took it to market. Investment in education leads to better standard of living economically, in terms of healthcare, in terms of social service. So I want to leave you with this. There are people that have been mentors to me and have inspired me, and one of them is Kevin Cosby. And what he's done, not only with his ministry, but in revitalizing Simmons College of Kentucky, because Simmons College of Kentucky, you heard it 3 or 4 months ago. Kevin was right here on this stage and talked to you about Simmons and what they were doing. Simmons can reach people that we cannot reach at the University of Louisville. They can reach students that Tony Newberry couldn't reach at the Jefferson Community Technical College. We're locked at the hip before the holidays. One of my proudest moments, Kevin, was to sign another articulation agreement with you and Frank and Simmons and the great work that you all are doing. And Simmons and Kevin have said education is king. And Martin Luther King has said all God's children, not just some in some zip codes that are on the east side of Louisville, but all God's children should have the opportunity to get a quality education, because one of my other mentors, Woodford Porter, said education is the great equalizer. That's our focus at the University of Louisville, and that will be our focus as we continue to move forward. I thank you for all the support. The cards, the letters, the notes, the support I've gotten is overwhelming. And I appreciate it, but I don't want you to worry about me, for no one is more blessed than Jim Ramsey of Fern Creek, Kentucky. My faith is strong. I have an amazing family and friends that believe in me more than I could ever believe in myself. And you see the other guys there, the pugs? They're always glad to see me at the end of the day. They don't read the paper. They use it. They do use it for other purposes. Thank you, and God bless you for all that you do.